Okay, so I am the Humane Party New York State developer, and this panel discussion will be to talk about a variety of different approaches to advancing animal rights within the political framework. So we've got a pretty brief time. Rachel has to leave at 4:45, so we're going to try and keep things pretty quick. So, Allie, do you want to just introduce yourself, I think? And then we'll just, I know most people have been introduced, so we'll just quickly go through. Take that one. Okay. Yeah, I'll take that one.
Hi, my name is Allie Taylor, and I'm the founder of Voters for Animal Rights. We work to hold elected officials accountable to humane voters and pass laws to advance animal rights.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Adrienne Craig Williams, and I am currently the Green Party candidate for Assembly in District 74, which is right there. I'm a vegan, and my animal rights is on my platform, and thank you.
Sorry.
Hello again, New York. It's been nearly 3 minutes since we last met. My name is Robert Mason. I'm the Texas vegan yogi political candidate running for U.S. House of Representatives, and supported by the Humane Party and the Green Party.
Hello, and I'm Rachel Atcheson. I'm leaving in a few minutes to go to another vegan event, so I don't feel too badly about that. So I am the Animal Welfare Liaison under Mayor de Blasio.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. So I think we'll cut straight to the point, and we're going to just give a couple of definitions, or one definition here, which is progressive politics. Wikipedia, as a philosophy, is based on the idea of progress, which asserts that advancement in science, technology, economic development, and social organization are vital to the improvement of the human condition. Okay, so that's the definition of progression. And I have a quote from one of the world's leading authorities in consciousness, a scientific expert on consciousness, and he states that behavioral and neuroscientific studies across the animal kingdom demonstrate, and this is obvious to all of us, but he's a scientist saying this, demonstrate that many species share the sight, sounds of life with us as humans, that they too can feel, even though they can't talk about it. So the question is, given these, and I'm going to cut through the getting to personal rights because our backgrounds, we're just going to cut straight to this question. Why, given this scientific reality and all the technology that you have, why are other species' rights missing from the progressive agenda? It doesn't make sense. Logically, it makes no sense, right? And what can we do about that? And Rachel, do you want to go first? Because you're,
Sure,
yeah.
We can. So one thing, so progressivism is fueled by constituent concerns, and I know firsthand that constituents do not get in touch as much as we would expect them to. So who here, first of all, who here knows who your council member is? Okay, so I see about 25%. That's better than average, congratulations, but that's 25%. And that shows city council. Who here knows who your state assembly person is? Okay, same types of folks are knowing these. So either you're knowing and you're active, or you're fairly politically disengaged. And I think that is the normal mainstream vegan animal rights person. And we are going as constituents and supporting with our dollars restaurants, but we're not necessarily going and supporting political candidates. And we are not getting in touch with government in the first place. So, for example, in the last 14 months that I have been the animal liaison, I've received probably less than 50 constituent concerns, and that is incredibly low. And so,
shocking.
Yeah, that's something to think about when we're thinking about progressivism in general. Are we active? I mean, the animals are not able to be here to speak on behalf of themselves, so we have to be those people. And if we're not those people, there's no one that is going to be representing them.
Thank you.
I'd like to build on that just a little bit and talk about, I think, inertia and capitalism. Inertia is a very powerful force, and we have created a society where we've made money off the exploitation of animals for, well, I mean, since our society began in the United States. Inertia is a powerful force. It's very tough to get people to give up something that personally provides for their livelihood. And in this particular case, I'm talking about financially. So the only way that I see that we're going to counter this progressively and get past animal agriculture is really through education. We need to get people thinking about what they do when they vote with their dollars, when they spend money. They need to be accountable for their own consumer behavior. They need to be accountable for the decisions that they're making in their lives and who they're choosing to put into office and the decisions that those people are overtly telling you they will or will not make. I think that starting to check personal accountability in your own livelihood is probably the best that we can do to get past animal agriculture.
Thanks. So yeah, I agree with what Rachel said about that we need to all like contact the people in power and contact them loudly and often, and also we need to put people in power, as Jabari was saying. And one of the reasons I'm running as a Green is because of their animal rights platform. And one of the big things I think that goes along with what you were saying is we need to take all the subsidies out of animal agriculture. They need to be responsible for their environmental costs. We need to not subsidize the dairy industry, as someone else was mentioning, not subsidize any of this. Because part of the reason that people don't want to eat, well, we have a lot of poverty, and those people, it's harder to eat really nice, fresh vegetables. So we need to make the meat cost more, because that's what it costs for real. So yeah, getting people elected like Robert, like me, also will go a long way. Thanks.
So one of I think the primary reason that we don't see animal rights issues in progressive politics is that we haven't inserted ourselves into the political structures that currently exist out there, right? So let's take New York City, for example. In New York City, politics is very much based on county political parties, whether it's the Brooklyn Democratic Party or the Queens Democratic Party. From that level, there are what are called assembly districts, or ADs for short. Every single assembly district has what's called a political club. In my neighborhood, there's the Vita Political Club. On the Upper West Side, you'll have, for instance, the Ansonia Democratic Club, or in Brooklyn, for instance, you'll have New Kings Democratic Club. And what those clubs do is they work to endorse candidates for local elected office. If you go to those political clubs and you join, what you'll notice is that there's nobody in those clubs that is a vegan or an animal rights activist. And one of the reasons I started Voters for Animal Rights is because we want to change that, right? Like, we want to insert ourselves into the existing political structures so that we can have some influence there. One of the things I did when I don't live there now, when I lived in the Upper West Side, is I joined my local political club, which is called Ansonia. I volunteered, showed up to every meeting, came early and stayed late, helped them petition. And throughout that, as they got to know me, I got to become sort of like the animal rights person within the club. And because of that, the folks in that club were more friendly towards pending animal legislation. Local elected officials go to those club meetings every single month because they know that the people who are in those clubs are basically going to help them get reelected. So one thing I would strongly recommend that people do is look up what your assembly district is online, find out the name of your local political club, and join. The meetings are not that exciting, but they're incredibly important, and by becoming a part of the local establishment, you can start inserting the issues that matter to you into what they're going to be working on. And I can promise you that when local electeds start seeing you show up to these Democratic clubs every single month, they're going to start to notice, wow, there's all these animal people who are coming to these meetings and they're getting super involved, and they're going to start to pay more attention to these issues because they're seeing that their constituents are caring deeply about these issues rather than other stuff.
That's great, thank you. And I'm going to move the fantastic viewpoints. So I'm going to move on to a question which should be an interesting one, because there's a whole spectrum, I guess, of different approaches on this. Should vegans and vegetarians vote for political parties that don't share their moral values? And that's certainly true of the two major political parties. They do not share the values that we do around animals. And obviously, Rachel, you're operating within the framework of the Democratic Party, essentially. So it would be interesting to see an inside view versus third-party views.
Yeah, New York City is interesting because we largely are a one-party system. And so for me, it's been important that when looking at candidates, we're looking at candidate positions on certain issues and not necessarily their party. So there have been Republicans within City Council who are good on animal issues, and I would rather, as a Democrat, I would rather have that Republican in that position if they are good on animal issues.
So you see that if you look at a candidate, even if they're not in the party doesn't have the values, it's still worthwhile to support that candidate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the two major entrenched parties are at this point not going to change. I mean, we're lucky to have Cory Booker as a lone vegan on the Hill, and I don't see that changing anytime soon either. I think that the way we're going to do it is by embracing the opportunity for new third parties and independent parties to rise up and to push local agendas and hopefully the vegan agenda. I don't know how to say it better than that, but avoid the reds and the blues. Unlike New York, Texas has a red problem as opposed to a blue problem, but it's the other side of the same coin. And the best thing to do is to try and get involved locally and have that conversation at the local level.
Yeah, I was excited to answer this question when I saw it on the list of questions. I think veganism is usually part of a respect for humans as well, and like I will never vote Democratic because of war, among other reasons. And so the Green Party, because it's a peace party and because it embraces human rights, it also embraces animal rights, and I think these kind of things go together. And obviously I agree that the Green Party should be the future. And so one thing about voting for the Green Party is I never have to worry if they share my values or not, because the party platform is so clear and beautiful and about peace and safety for all humans, and compassion. So thank you.
So if I voted or we voted, based on whether or not elected official is vegan, there'd be no one to vote for, which is the truth. And so because, at Voters for Animal Rights, it's our goal is we want to make progress. And at the end of the day, we need to win over elected officials in order to get them to vote for the laws that we want them to pass. And so to do that, sometimes or 99.9% of the time, we have to put aside our personal convictions and vote for the person that is, at the end of the day, going to be most expedient in getting our agenda passed, which is animal rights. So for instance, when we were working on a bill to ban the use of animals in the circus last year, we surveyed all of the candidates who were running for city council on where they stood on that issue. And election years are great because that's the one time every 4 years when you can get these elected officials on record on these issues. And so we surveyed them all on their stance on the circus and mobilized our supporters to vote for those members who would support a ban on the use of animals in the circus. Had we not mobilized voters for these folks, it would have been very, very hard for us to have any kind of leverage to get them to vote for the circus bill when it came up, especially if they'd known that we had told people not to vote for them. So really, until third parties have a much larger rise for us, we find that we're much more effective by working within the current system, even though it's not completely in line with what our values are.
Okay, thank you very much for those answers. That's extremely helpful to see different viewpoints on how to affect political change. I mean, looking at what you guys are all seeing changing, and I think we've all seen a big increase in veganism. What are do you believe the biggest drivers for political change? Is it technological, cultural, social media, or something else?
The biggest drivers for change in terms of animal products, in terms of
Any improvement for animal, for vegan, moving away from animal agriculture?
So food tech and the kind of Silicon Valley move to create new products on the market, I think presents enormous potential to really end factory farming. We're also seeing a rise in investments in this area. So Tyson, which we know is this horrible company that perpetuates animal cruelty, they have now put money into clean meat, which is meat that is in essence grown in a lab, in a bioreactor, etc. So clean meat is something that I am very, very excited about because I think it provides the potential for us to really get rid of the animal cruelty from the process. So when we think of food, we think of three data points that we really need to match on the vegetarian and vegan level. So we need to match price. So vegetarian and vegan foods need to be cheap. We need to match convenience. So if you go into a 7-Eleven, you need to be very able to get any sort of product that you'd like. And we need to match taste, which thankfully we here know that taste is not something that we have an issue with. But it has been in the past. When I first started eating veggie burgers, they definitely tasted more like cardboard than they do what I had been eating previously. So if we can match those three data points, I think that we will move away from animal agriculture. And we're seeing food tech companies such as Just, such as Miyoko's. There's so many brands these days that it is hard to even keep track. So I think that is really where we will see the end of animal agriculture come. And with that, I am sadly
Rachel has to leave us to go to another animal event.
Yes.
Hero for the animals, going from event to event. So thank you very much, Rachel.
If anyone wants to get in touch, organizers know how to reach me. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I really love the food tech answer, and I'm just going to second on that for a second. I am keenly aware that there's a restaurant here in New York called Momofuku, for one reason, and it's because for years it was the only legendary place that you could go and acquire an Impossible Burger.
Yes.
With lines around the block.
They're not that easy, or they're getting easier, right?
They are getting easier. Yeah, absolutely. We even have it in Texas these days. I can't even tell you the restaurant where I had breakfast this morning, but the food tech is driving, I think, so much of change for people like me. And I'm a fairly young vegan. I'm going on 3 years at this point. But I think that food tech and accessibility is so important and is driving so much change.
Do you think that when the food tech gets good enough, it will be easy to have a constitutional amendment for the protection of other species?
I do. I really do, because I think it's going to solve the economics problem. And by then, we'll be facing such a looming environmental problem, we're going to be begging for change.
When I thought about this question, I thought more about political change. I think comes from cultural change, especially as you've been saying, inserting yourself into the process, and these kind of events, and being loud about it, and talking about it every time you get a chance. And I also think that workers' rights movements will lead away from animal agriculture because of the way that usually people who work in slaughterhouses or people who work in these factory farms, especially if they're immigrants, they don't get treated very well. So the more we work on respecting the humans as well, the better chance we have of getting everyone to respect the animals, because the people who work in these places don't have political power, only the owners do. So if we can activate them as well, that would be helpful. So workers' rights movements and inserting yourself into the current movements and being loud and talking about it.
I think everybody covered my sentiments as well.
Okay, so in summary, we're going to end with what, if you could only ask for one action from the audience, what would you ask for? As a follow-up call to action, what would it be?
Honestly, it would be about spending. I would say just please be accountable for how you consume, where your dollars go, because that is a great source of power in our country right now, and that's how decisions get made.
So if you live in Manhattan's AD 74, the next thing you should do is vote for me. We currently don't have an assembly member, so you don't even have to know who it is. But you can have me as your assembly member.
Do you want to give your email and just repeat your name again?
Oh, sure. My name's Adrienne Craig Williams, and my website is adrienne2018.com, and I have literature and buttons and everything. Thanks.
And which neighborhoods does your district cover?
It's the East Village up to the UN on the east side. So actually across the street there is my district.
Awesome.
Not here.
Not the park, across the street. Nice.
And there are special elections coming up. When is it? April 26th? April 24th. Tuesday. Is it a Tuesday? Tuesday, April 24th. There are special elections in New York for a bunch of Senate and Assembly seats. And so now is a great opportunity to get in touch with the candidates that are running and ask them these questions about animal protection issues. I can't stress enough that when people are running for office, that is the #1 time to get elected officials on record, because they're trying to kiss your butts for votes. It's very hard to get them to go on record on animal rights issues when they don't have the incentive, because they don't have an election coming up. So one thing I would ask of everybody in the audience to do that would be super helpful is if you can go to Voters for Animal Rights website. It's just vfar.org. Sign up. And once you do, we'll start notifying you about ways that you can get politically active for animal rights in New York City. We're going to be having all kinds of volunteer meetings coming up, political potlucks. We'll be talking about the upcoming elections and ways that you can get involved in lobbying for animal rights as well. So it's vfar.org. Please sign up.
And actually, I'm presenting this panel, but I'm going to put my call to action in, if that's okay. So I'm the state developer for the Humane Party of New York, and I think what everybody was agreeing with on the panel was that if we don't have a vegan candidate, then we are essentially compromising our morals when we vote for someone. And so one of the key purposes is to give people that option of having someone to vote for who shares the same morality that they have. And so that is one of the key things that the Humane Party wants to do, is to have officials who are vegan. They have to be vegan to be a candidate within the Humane Party. And so one of the call to action I have is, if you are interested in becoming an elected official, if you know someone who is, or you'd like to make a recommendation, then please contact us. You can come over to the Humane Party booth over there. But we want to get candidates so that we can vote with our values, which we don't often get the chance to do that. So that would be my call to action. And so I'd like to say thank you so much to the panel. I really enjoyed it. I hope you have. And I hope the audience does. And actually, we're going to have a few questions from the audience. If anybody has questions, we're going to have to keep it pretty quick. But if anyone has a burning question they would like to ask the panelists. Yeah, it was a bit off topic.
Would each of you look for candidates, or those of you who are candidates, who specifically want to support non-human rights, as a non-human rights project, which would allow legal representation for animals that are being abused in court directly without ownership?
Yes, I would, if I may answer first. Yes, I definitely would. I definitely believe that they deserve rights and representation.
Yeah, I mean, nothing to add. Totally agreed.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a terrific idea, and I would actually love to. I appreciate that suggestion, because I think we would like to, going forward, start including a question about non-human rights on our candidate questionnaire. So thank you for that idea.
Any other questions before we wrap up the panel? Oh, well, thank you very much to the panelists. I very much appreciate. Oh, we have another question. Oh. Sorry.
sorry, the wireless mics don't work here, so we have to stick with these.
Okay, that's no problem. Hi, thanks for doing this. Okay, I attended an animal rights conference hosted by Farm in Alexandria, Virginia last year. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And I went to one particular plenary that discussed, you wouldn't at first think that there's a nexus here, human overpopulation and how it is, that threatens biodiversity and animal well-being more than anything, even though it's not much discussed by most populations. The biggest thing we can do to help animals, help the planet, it cuts short big ag, et cetera, is to work on stabilizing and negating the human population. 2 billion is the ideal number of people to sustain biodiversity in all of its fullness. In any case, I haven't seen any political party ever at all go there or discuss it, probably because of fears of politically incorrect goals like racial genocide and all that, or the perception that those are your goals. Do you see your parties taking on stabilizing the human population as a part of a platform anytime in the future? Because we really, really, really need to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. Thanks.
Of course. Yeah. All right. So I'll take this fun one. I honestly don't think you'll ever see political parties take it on as a particular stance, because I think we can all think of the last political party that did, and they became a problem for the whole world through like the 40s. So I don't think anybody's ever going to stand up and say, yes, we need to have population control, because it's such a sticky wicket from history. Now that said, I do think there are a number of political parties that identify it as a problem, even if they won't talk about it overtly. And my understanding is that, sort of as my own approach, education is key. As long as we can get real evidence-based education happening in schools, we're going to have more vegans. We're going to have more family planning, and we're going to have, as a result, then population control as a natural next step.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's a problem, but I'm not sure. I think the way to focus on it is to focus on quality of life for all animals and people, because I think the more stable your life is, the fewer kids you have. But yeah, it's something that I think about, but it's very complicated, yes.
I agree with you guys as well. I think one way that you could address this with your elected officials is to not specifically talk about population control, but to address the environmental effects of animal agriculture. I think that's a good way to address factory farming with electeds who may not be interested in it from the animal cruelty point of view, but who may be interested in it from an environmental and economic point of view.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up now. Thank you for those questions. They were very interesting. And thank you again to the panelists. I hope that, it's nice to see animal rights being discussed, as a primary issue for us.